Shalom, brothers and sisters. So the Israel tensions around the world keep growing. The hatred against the Jews, Judaism, anything Jewish, anything biblical, and anything land of Israel still keeps skyrocketing. And this is now pretty much all nations. And if you look at your own nation and you go and dig, you'll see they are most probably part of this problem. I know in South Africa it's a very, very real thing. So let's touch on just a few things and give you an idea of how this is shaping up for Israel as of this week in 2024. So they had a huge attack on Israel, Hezbollah, which the world's not crying out about or upset about or demanding that stop immediately because it's Hezbollah, not Israel. 4 soldiers killed, 58 wounded, including 7 in critical condition by Hezbollah drone strike 60 kilometers deep within Israeli territory. According to Magen David Adom Emergency Services, 4 soldiers were killed, 58 people wounded, 7 critical, at least 11 others in serious to moderate condition, while the rest sustained minor injuries. This was due to a Hezbollah drone exploding near the town of Binyamina, 65 kilometers from the border on Sunday evening. So that's a Hezbollah attack. No worldwide outcry, no upset, no nothing about civilians affected, nothing. It's fine. Why? Because it's not Jews. And it's only Jews that are getting hurt, so what's the problem? But the minute the Jews defend themselves from that attack now, whoa, Security Council meetings, United Nations emergency meetings, major discourse from all world leaders, but Hezbollah, we're good. Same as with Hamas. See the problem here. Hezbollah now facing backlash in Lebanon as Israel's invasion widens. As they keep pushing, it brings more destruction to the Mediterranean nation, angering the Lebanese who are already upset with Israel. With displeasure with its foe, Hezbollah is also growing. 1,400 Lebanese dead, more than 1 million displaced nationwide. A fifth of the country's population now affected due to Hezbollah's non-stop attacks on Israel that have now brought Israel's retaliation on them. Unfortunately, today we're all stuck, Gemayel said. Hezbollah is continuing its war, it's not willing to stop, and it's taking the whole country to hell with it. Couldn't have picked better words to describe what's happening. Hezbollah is taking the country to hell. Not Israel. Israel's had enough, and she's putting an end to this non-stop shooting at its civilian population centers and the undeclared war from Hezbollah. And now that means that Hezbollah is dragging Lebanon to hell with it because of what's coming and what is currently happening. Biden calls on Israeli military to stop the strikes on UN peacekeepers in Lebanon. Now again, you'd think by now they would have learnt with the whole Hamas situation and the UN and UNRWA and all these things that these are generally terrorists and they teach hatred for Jews and murder of Jews, and that's why they're in the firing line. Why aren't they evacuating? When the whole thing blew up in Syria many years ago, they evacuated fast to make sure they weren't in the firing line. Now that there's a similar situation in Lebanon, now they're not evacuating. Why? Because they are probably the terrorists. President Joe Biden said he is absolutely positively asking the Israeli military to stop hitting UN peacekeepers as international outrage grows over the attacks, which the Lebanese Prime Minister has called a war crime. Sure, I've seen enough news and proof to know that's not the case. And why are they still there if they're not assisting or helping the actual terrorists in the situation? And we've seen this with the UN time and time again, with UNRWA time and time again. We've seen this with the so-called Al Jazeera journalists time and time again. How many times do you need to see this before you stop reporting that Israel's just indiscriminately attacking UN peacekeeping forces? If they were peacekeeping, they'd be keeping the peace. They'd be promoting harmony between people groups. That is not what's happening. Netanyahu says the UN must withdraw South Lebanon peacekeepers from combat zones. He's asked this many times. They're ignoring him. Prime Minister accuses Hezbollah of using UNIFIL as human shields and urges Guterres to get the forces out of harm's way. This was on Sunday when he called on the United Nations to immediately pull its peacekeeping force in southern Lebanon. Netanyahu's comments came as the UN peacekeeping force said 2 Israeli Defense Force tanks had entered a United Nations interim force in Lebanon on Sunday. The IDF said the incident took place during an attempt to evacuate wounded IDF soldiers under fire. In urging that members of UNIFIL be moved out of harm's way, Netanyahu said that previous similar pleas by Israel had been refused, despite a rising number of injuries in UNIFIL troops. Now, the United Nations further declares, after their Security Council meeting, they call for an end to the Israel and Hezbollah war, the same way they called for an end to the Israel-Hamas war. Every time Israel says enough and pushes back against these terror organizations, then suddenly Security Council meeting and bring an end to this war. If you could negotiate with terrorists, maybe you, the United Nitwits, should get in there and go and negotiate, and then learn for yourself you can't romance a snake. The United Nations Security Council called for a durable end to the year-long IDF-Hezbollah war as Netanyahu insisted Israel would continue to strike the Iranian proxy group everywhere it was situated in Lebanon. And he is doing that and continuing to do that for now. Netanyahu reveals Israel will carry out a strike against Iranian military targets before November 5 election in America. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu told the United States Israel will limit its retaliatory attacks against Iran to military targets and will forego attacks on the Islamic Republic's nuclear and oil facilities. Why? Why bow to American pressure and worldwide pressure? Why not use the opportunity to take out your enemy's teeth immediately? Take out the nuclear facilities, hit their oil. Why do they not want them to hit the oil? Because it's going to affect the oil market all over the world. You know what? It's a little bit too late to worry about that now. We're in the final innings and pretty much everything else by design is crashing. So why worry about the oil system taking a plunge as well? But again, pressure from America, and here we go, military targets. This is going to affect Netanyahu's standing in Israel with people that were either with him and those who are against him, which again cuts his political career very short. Sorry. The Prime Minister's office said, "We are listening to the opinions of the US administration." First mistake. "We will make our final decisions based on Israel's national interest." Israel's attack would be carried out before the November 5 elections, since the lack of a response would be interpreted by Iran as a sign of weakness. This will be the first in a series of reactions. So what he's indirectly saying there is we'll attack before the elections, but regardless of what that attack is and if it's just military targets or what the problem is, we are going to continue attacking. So this is stage 1. And then hopefully stage 2, he'll be free from his promise not to hit the oil and nuclear and go after those sites. But we'll see. We will see. CBS tells reporters Jerusalem is not in Israel. This is worldwide media. This shows you the sentiment towards Israel and the Bible. According to the report in the Free Press, the employees were instructed that when referring to Jerusalem, do not refer to it as being in Israel. So just remove all the Bibles in the world, because that's going to create confusion. Macron, ending arms exports to Israel is the only way to stop fighting. He claims Israel is deliberately targeting UNIFIL peacekeepers in Lebanon, which is absolutely unacceptable. He said stopping the export of weapons used by Israel in Gaza and Lebanon was the only way to end the fighting. We all know it. It's the unique lever that will end it, Macron said at the summit of European and Mediterranean leaders in Cyprus. Macron claimed Israel was deliberately targeting UNIFIL. Violence is the only path forward. Columbia University anti-Israel group voices open support for terrorism. Student who says Zionists don't deserve to live. Now, I've added that last one there on top of what Macron is saying to show you the balance here on why he's mentally deranged. Israel's under attack, so let's change it. France comes under attack by a bunch of lunatic terrorists. They're overwhelmed on 6 fronts, all over the place. Missiles, ballistic missiles, everything raining down on them. Terror attacks, massacres happening all the time. Their citizens are carried away, raped, baked in ovens, murdered. It is a horror show. How do we help France? We make sure she has no weapons, no ammunition, and that will bring an end to the fighting. It will, absolutely, because France will be wiped out. There'll be no more reason to fight for a few minutes. That's his thinking. And then at the same time, in the Western world, Columbia University anti-Israel group, violence is the only path forward. Terrorist thinking. Zionists don't deserve to live. Terrorist thinking. Thinking that people like Macron, who don't live and grow up in the Middle East, don't understand. Or, even more evil of a thought, they fully understand it and see it as an opportunity to once and for all be done with the Israel problem for themselves. Get rid of it and then try and negotiate with the savages that take over afterwards. There's just one problem with that. But God. Spain's Prime Minister calls on other countries to stop arming Israel in the latest salvo against the Jewish state. I believe it is urgent that in light of everything that is happening in the Middle East, the international community needs to stop exporting weapons to the government of Israel. This is an appeal that I will make to the international community, not to contribute in one way or another to the escalation of violence, to the war and its expansion in Gaza, West Bank and Lebanon. So again, Israel is under attack from multiple fronts. Let's stop the war by making sure Israel can't defend herself or attack back. Let's remove Israel's weapons completely and everybody hold thumbs. It's all going to be good. Morons, nitwits, crazy people, making 0 sense at all. This is the problem, and it's unfortunately prophetically laid out in the Word of God that they will all do exactly what they're doing right now. It's sad to watch supposedly intelligent, thinking people that can't see the truth written right in front of them, that can't see what's actually going down, and that are actively standing against Israel and calling for its destruction, just as the Word of God said would happen in the end times. And what is the result of this whole thing we're seeing right now? We're seeing that God is going to gather all nations at the end of the tribulation together in the valley and deal with them in judgment for the things they have done against his nation, that they are doing right now in front of our eyes. So keep praying for Israel. Keep praying for the peace of Jerusalem. And as long as we're here as the church, we will support her and pray for her and pray for more of them to have their salvation experience with Yeshua HaMashiach, their true Messiah. Shalom.